The chamber of the U.S. Capitol buzzed with an uneasy electricity. Reporters pressed forward, cameras blinking like restless eyes. Everyone knew this hearing was different. It wasn't just oversight, it was a showdown. At the center of it sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, a stack of files at her side, her hand resting on them as though they were weapons. Her gaze was locked on the empty chair across from her, the one reserved for Donald J. Trump. The doors opened. Trump entered with his trademark swagger, red tie swinging, smirk fixed firmly in place. The gallery erupted, cheers clashing with jeers, until the gavel hammered for silence. Trump sat down, leaning back as if this were his stage, not a congressional hearing. The chairman cleared his throat. We convene today to examine financial irregularities linked to Mr. Trump's campaign funds. His words echoed like a warning. Then, Representative Crockett, you have the floor. Crockett rose, her voice sharp and steady. Mr. Trump, nearly $45 million in campaign funds appear to have vanished, rerouted through shell organizations with no legitimate operations. Today we will find out where that money went. Reporters scribbled furiously. The crowd leaned in. Trump chuckled, shaking his head. Oh, Jasmine, he said, voice dripping with contempt. Always so dramatic. 45 million. Maybe you should check your math. Or maybe this is just another witch hunt from a very angry woman. The chamber cracked with outrage. Supporters shouted. Opponents fired back. The gavel slammed, but order was fragile. Crockett didn't blink. She opened a binder, sliding a document into the record. We're not here for theatrics, Mr. Trump. We're here for the truth. And the truth comes with receipts. Bold letters leapt from the page. Aurelius Foundation. The name hit the room like a thunderclap. Journalists exchanged glances. Some had heard whispers of it, a shadowy entity tied to offshore accounts, rumors of hidden influence. Trump's smirk faltered for the briefest second. Then he scoffed. Never heard of it. Sounds fake. Sad, really. But Crockett pressed on, her voice dropping into a blade-sharp tone. Then you won't mind explaining why your campaign transferred $12 million through their offshore accounts 3 weeks before the election. Gasps erupted. Trump stiffened. For the first time, words didn't come so easily. And in that moment, with the world watching, Crockett leaned forward and delivered the line that split the chamber wide open. This isn't just about missing money, Mr. Trump. It's about who's really pulling the strings. The storm had only begun. The silence that followed Jasmine Crockett's words was unlike any other silence inside the halls of Congress. It wasn't calm. It was charged. The kind of silence that seemed to press down on every chest in the chamber, as though the very air was holding its breath. Trump shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. He leaned into the microphone, his voice booming with the familiar bravado that had carried him through countless scandals. Who's pulling the strings? He laughed, loud, dismissive, the kind of laugh meant to mock rather than amuse. This is pathetic. You're wasting America's time, Jasmine. You're not a lawyer. You're not an investigator. You're just another radical Democrat who wants 15 minutes of fame. A ripple of applause burst from his supporters in the gallery, quickly drowned out by boos from the opposing side. The chairman's gavel hammered again and again, desperate to restore order. But Crockett wasn't rattled. She leaned forward, her tone steady, measured, surgical. With all due respect, Mr. Trump, this isn't about me. It's about you, your campaign, and the money that disappeared under your watch. She flipped to another page in her binder, holding it up for the committee to see. Transfers routed through subsidiaries in Cyprus, the Cayman Islands, and, most notably, an entity known as the Aurelius Foundation. The name reverberated again like a ghost no one wanted to admit existed. Trump rolled his eyes. Offshore accounts? Everyone uses offshore accounts, perfectly legal. Ask anyone in business. Ask anyone who's ever been successful, which I know you wouldn't understand. His voice sharpened. This is nothing but a hit job, and let's be clear. If money went through some foundation, it wasn't me. I don't even know what Aurelius is. Probably one of your friends in the radical left making things up. Crockett allowed the smirk to form now, cold, deliberate. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her control over tone was a weapon sharper than Trump's bluster. Mr. Trump, these aren't my friends, she said, holding up a document. These are your campaign accountants, your signatures, your approvals. She slid the paper into the record. And what's fascinating, what Americans deserve to know, is why these transfers occurred just days before key campaign ads flooded swing states. The reporters leaned forward, pens flying. On social media, the phrase Aurelius Foundation was already trending. Trump banged the table with his palm. Fake news! You're all fake! This is a disgrace! You people should be ashamed of yourselves. He jabbed a finger toward Crockett, his face flushing red. You especially. You've been nothing but trouble since you got here. You hate me because I speak for real Americans. You hate me because I won. Twice. The gallery roared again, the clash of cheers and boos swelling into chaos. Security guards stepped closer to the front row. The chairman's gavel cracked against wood, but order was fragile, ready to snap. Crockett waited. She didn't speak until the noise dulled, and when she did, her words cut through the chamber with chilling precision. This isn't about your victories, Mr. Trump. It's about accountability, and the American people deserve answers, not insults, not distractions, but the truth. Trump sneered. The truth? You wouldn't recognize the truth if it hit you in the face. The truth is, people like me built this country. People like you tear it down. This whole hearing is nothing but theater for the cameras. And you know what? I'll play along. Because when I walk out of here, I'll still be the one they cheer for. You'll be forgotten. The words stung the air, but Crockett didn't flinch. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. You're right about one thing, Mr. Trump. This is theater, but you're not the director anymore. You're the defendant. The chamber gasped. Even the chairman blinked in surprise at her boldness. Trump opened his mouth, ready to strike back, but Crockett raised her hand, stopping him cold. I haven't finished, she said, her voice rising for the first time. Because while you were busy calling this a witch hunt, we uncovered a trail, wire transfers, offshore accounts, signatures that match yours. And if that isn't enough, we have witnesses, people from your own circle, ready to testify under oath. The room froze. The weight of the word witnesses pressed down like a thundercloud. Trump's smirk faltered again. For the briefest second, something flickered in his eyes. Fear? Anger? Both? He masked it quickly, pounding the table once more. This is outrageous. Who? Who's testifying? Bring them out right now. I bet it's someone disgruntled, someone you paid off. I'll destroy them. You hear me? I'll destroy them. The chairman's gavel pounded. Mr. Trump, control yourself. But the chamber was already spiraling into chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Security tightened the aisles, and Crockett simply stood there, binder in hand, her composure unshaken. When the noise finally subsided, she spoke again, softer now, forcing the crowd to lean in to hear her. You want names, Mr. Trump. You'll have them soon. But know this. When the witness steps forward, the story changes, and no amount of shouting will silence what's coming. Her words lingered in the chamber like the last notes of a warning bell. Trump glared at her, fists clenched on the table. The clash of wills between them had ignited the room, but something darker, heavier was brewing just beyond the doors. The storm outside this chamber was about to break inside it. The echoes of Crockett's last words still lingered in the chamber. When the witness steps forward, the story changes. It wasn't just a statement, it was a loaded promise, and the weight of it pressed into the hearts of everyone present. The chairman cleared his throat, trying to bring the hearing back to order. Representative Crockett, proceed. Crockett nodded, flipping to another section of her binder. The room grew quiet. Even Trump, arms crossed and jaw set, leaned forward as though daring her to continue. Mr. Trump, Crockett began, her voice steady and deliberate. What we have uncovered is not a single transaction, nor a clerical error. What we found is a pattern, a network of financial channels designed not to be seen. She tapped the papers before her. And yet, here they are in plain view. She lifted the first document, a bank statement stamped with a foreign seal. August 17th, 2 weeks before your campaign's biggest ad blitz, a transfer of $4 million left a domestic super PAC account. That money didn't go to television networks, it didn't go to grassroots organizers, it went to a shell company registered in Cyprus, Morelia Holdings. Trump scoffed, loud enough for the microphone to catch it. Business, perfectly legal. I don't know how many times we have to say it. Perfectly legal. But Crockett pressed forward, unshaken. She turned the page to reveal another transfer. 3 days later, $2 million more. This time routed through the Cayman Islands into an entity known as Rexford International. Another shell. No staff. No office. Only a mailbox and a lawyer. She held up a third document, her voice growing sharper with each word. And then this, October 22nd, $12 million routed through the Aurelius Foundation. The name dropped like lead. A murmur swept the chamber, deeper than before. Crockett leaned in, eyes locked on Trump. And do you know what the Aurelius Foundation lists as its official purpose? She paused, letting the tension stretch until the room was hanging on her every syllable. Children's literacy programs. Gasps, laughter, bitter and disbelieving. One reporter whispered audibly, 12 million for children's books? Trump waved a dismissive hand, his voice rising in frustration. Fake! Fake foundation, fake documents, fake everything. This is a setup. I don't control where super PAC money goes, and everyone knows that. You're wasting everyone's time. Crockett's lips tightened into a razor-thin smile. Then, Mr. Trump, you won't mind explaining why your personal signature appears on the authorization of these transfers. She slid the final page onto the committee desk. Bold and unmistakable, beneath a line of authorizations, sat the scrawling, flamboyant signature of Donald J. Trump. The room erupted, reporters shouting, phones buzzing, the chamber alive with disbelief. The chairman's gavel thundered, but it could not silence the wildfire spreading through the audience. Trump's face reddened. He slammed his palm on the desk. Forgery! That's not my signature. You people forge everything. This is a deep state scam, and you know it. But his words didn't land with the same power. There was a crack in the facade now, a visible tremor beneath the bravado. Crockett saw it, and she pressed the advantage. Mr. Trump, if this were simply about forgery, why does every one of these transfers connect back to Aurelius? Why does Aurelius appear not only in your campaign accounts, but also in the financial disclosures of at least 3 members of your inner circle? The crowd gasped again. Reporters shouted questions over one another. The name Aurelius was no longer a whisper. It was a roar. Trump leaned back, gripping the arms of his chair, shaking his head. This is ridiculous. Aurelius is nothing. Probably doesn't even exist. You people are falling for smoke and mirrors. But Crockett had more. She pulled a slim folder from beneath her binder, opening it slowly, deliberately. Oh, Aurelius exists, Mr. Trump. In fact, Aurelius has existed for over 2 decades, registered in Switzerland with branches in Panama and Dubai. And here's the most interesting part. Aurelius has no public-facing operations, no board, no listed executives. Its entire structure is hidden behind proxy names and offshore trusts. The chairman shifted uncomfortably. Several committee members exchanged uneasy glances. What Crockett was describing wasn't just shady bookkeeping, it was the architecture of a hidden empire. Trump leaned into the microphone, his tone defiant but edged with unease. So what? So what if a foundation exists? Lots of foundations exist. You don't know what you're talking about. This is another hoax, another Russia, another Ukraine. You're all pathetic. Crockett tilted her head, her voice lowering to a chilling calm. What's pathetic, Mr. Trump, is pretending you don't know the very organization that's been funneling millions into your campaign. What's pathetic is underestimating the American people, thinking they'll never notice where the money comes from or what it buys. Her words landed heavy, and the room went still again. Then she delivered the final blow of the session. And let me be clear. Aurelius is not just a financial entity, it's a network with ties to foreign oligarchs, to secret accounts in Switzerland, and to shadow donors who have more to lose than you do, Mr. Trump. Because when Aurelius is exposed, so is everything behind it. The silence this time was not charged. It was suffocating. Even Trump's most loyal supporters in the gallery seemed unsettled, their chants dying in their throats. Trump leaned back, forcing a grin, but his fingers drummed against the table in restless rhythm. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The chairman, visibly shaken, finally broke the tension. Representative Crockett, are you suggesting there is a broader conspiracy at play here? Crockett closed the binder slowly, her eyes never leaving Trump's. I'm not suggesting, Mr. Chairman, I'm stating it. The money trail doesn't end here, it only begins here. And if we follow it to its source, we may find that Mr. Trump isn't the one pulling the strings after all. Gasps rippled through the chamber again. Trump's eyes narrowed, his face tightening, his silence louder than any denial. Outside, the chants of protesters grew louder, as though the crowd somehow sensed the shift. Aurelius. The name was now alive, a specter stalking the halls of power. And deep inside the Capitol, Jasmine Crockett knew she had only scratched the surface. The real storm was still waiting to break. No one in the chamber moved. It was as if the floor itself had tilted and everyone was bracing for the slide. The chairman rubbed his temples, searching for some parliamentary foothold. Cameras hummed. The gallery stilled. Jasmine Crockett closed her binder, then opened a thinner slate-black folder with a strip of red tape along the edge. Evidence marked for a moment she'd been waiting to control. "Mr. Chairman," she said, head still bowed, voice steady, "with the committee's permission, I'd like to enter a limited selection of communications into the record. These are redacted to protect ongoing investigations and innocent parties." Trump rolled his eyes so dramatically the lenses of 3 cameras actually caught it in synchronized HD. "Redacted," he scoffed into the mic. "Because it's fake." Crockett lifted her gaze. "Because it's sensitive." The screen behind her, one of the large monitors used for exhibits, blinked to life, revealing a clean white interface with a web of lines and nodes. The title along the top, Aurelius, Operational Constellation. Thin filaments connected shell entities and trust vehicles like a star map. Morelia Holdings, CY. Rexford International, KY. Boreal Trust, PA. Nereus Advisories, AE. And at the center, a black node with a burnished rim. Aurelius Foundation, CH. "This," Crockett said, "is what a dark money ecosystem looks like when you force it into daylight. Streams from political committees, social welfare nonprofits, private placements, and art purchases feeding a central vessel, which then redistributes through boutique consultancies and cutouts tied to election influence. We aren't talking about normal political giving." She tapped a remote. A new layer bloomed. Media buys, micro-targeting brokers, disinformation mills, issue advocacy fronts. "We're talking about a machine." Trump leaned into the mic with a grin he'd used for decades to turn the camera's hunger into his armor. "Great graphic. Very pretty. Still fake." Crockett didn't look at him. Exhibit 12C. The screen split to show an email header from the archivist assetsallluxledger.h to directorate opsna.deartrust.ae subject Bastion Protocol, cycle B3. Large black bars crossed much of the body, but a few lines were intact. Glide path complete by E14. Ramp assets through Aurelius to Sable Oak, LLC. Maintain children's literacy posture publicly. Avoid direct U.S. wire. Use art lots, Basel Fair, per Eidolon. A ripple ran through the gallery like a shiver. The words felt like cold metal. Glide path, Bastion Protocol, Eidolon. So coded they were almost theatrical. Yet the money flows in the earlier charts had mirrored them all too cleanly. Trump's counsel half rose from his seat. "Mr. Chairman, these are unauthenticated, unverifiable. They're corroborated by banking metadata and ledger hash values." Crockett cut in, eyes still on the screen. "The full chain of custody is under seal with the Inspector General and the DOJ Public Integrity Section. What you're seeing is the minimum the public has a right to see now." The chairman hesitated, then nodded. "Objection noted. The exhibit will be received with the redactions as presented." Crockett clicked again. A second email surfaced, this one shorter, colder. From Eidolon, subject narrative spend. Push swing state inventory via soft issue channels. Prioritize security, order, and cost of living content. No direct candidate references in B3 window. Utilize proxy messengers, faith groups, veteran spokes. Aurelius will settle EOIM. "What is this?" Trump demanded, gesturing at the screen. "Eidolon, are we in a comic book? Is Batman going to show up now?" Some in the gallery laughed, but it died quickly. Crockett turned at last to face him. "It's a code name, Mr. Trump. The person behind Aurelius, the one who built the maze. Silence dense and watchful." She paced a single step. "For 2 decades, the Aurelius network has existed as a kind of financial palimpsest. Layers of entities written over older entities, scraping off names, leaving ghost impressions behind. The goal isn't just hiding money, it's laundering influence, turning private wealth into narrative power that cannot be traced to the original pocket." She lifted a page, reading, "Micro-targeting contracts to shell media firms that never air the ads under their own names. Payments to issue nonprofits that mobilize volunteers who were never political. Sponsorship of museum exhibits. Art lots used as collateral for loans that never get repaid. Because the art itself is the conduit." She looked up. "This committee has seen today how $12 million allegedly traveled through a foundation whose public mission is children's literacy. The emails you're reading show why." Beat. "Because literacy is a perfect public face for a private mouth." The chair of a senior member creaked loudly. He squared his shoulders, voice hushed but clear. Representative Crockett, are you asserting that the Aurelius Foundation is a sham? Crockett answered with lawyerly precision. I am asserting that within this fictional dramatization and for the purposes of this narrative record, the behavior of the entities associated with Aurelius is consistent with concealment. The question is, concealed from whom and for whom? Trump sniffed into the mic. I still don't see my name in those emails. You likely wouldn't, she replied, because the point of a cutout is plausible deniability, but your benefit appears again and again, and then there are the signatures. She changed the slide. A timeline appeared, marching from spring to late fall of an election year. Pins marked E90, E30, E14. Beneath each, small thumbnails, wire approvals, invoice thumbs, authorization initials. At E21, a doc flagged read, Special Discretionary, Media Liquidity, 12,000 USD. A stylized signature sprawled across the bottom like an unmistakable brand. The room breathed together, a sound like a wave pulling back before the crash. Trump's fist thumped the table once, twice. Forgery. Crockett stepped closer to the mic, the slightest iron edge entering her tone. We'll hear expert opinion on that, but your counsel knows what I know. Signature forensics have already been conducted by independent examiners under subpoena. Their preliminary findings are under seal with the clerk. A murmur rolled through the dais. Trump stared, blinking slower now, rage organized into calculation. He lifted a sheet of paper of his own, raising it like a shield. Here's what's not under seal, he said. Here's what everyone knows. You people are terrified of the voters. That's what this is about. You're terrified that real Americans think for themselves. So you make charts, you read fake emails, and you try to turn me into a bogeyman because you can't beat me. Crockett didn't answer him. She turned back to the chamber, to the camera, to the country. The bogeyman isn't a person, she said quietly. It's a design. Another screen. A heat map of transaction hops. Lines pulsed between Zurich, Dubai, Limassol, Panama City. Lighter threads stitched through Miami, Houston, Columbus. We cross-reference transfer timestamps with public ad buy disclosures, third-party content bursts, and bot network spikes on social platforms. Each surge corresponds with Aurelius-facilitated liquidity. Not a perfect overlay, nothing ever is, but the fingerprint is there. A committee member from the minority leaned into his mic, brow furrowed. So your theory is that this Aurelius funds narratives, not candidates? Crockett nodded. Narratives outlast candidates. Narratives survive indictments, scandals, defeats. Narratives are the scaffolding for the next cycle. If you capture the scaffolding, you don't need to control every brick. Eyes flicked back to Trump. For the first time, the hearing felt as though it had stepped past him, beyond the spectacle of his presence, toward the architecture he had benefited from, maybe ridden like a storm he didn't direct but knew how to surf. On the far side of the room, a staffer slipped into the aisle, catching Crockett's eye. He didn't speak. He just held up a phone with a single line of text across the lock screen. He's here. Crockett's heartbeat thudded once, then settled into that metronome rhythm she learned in courtrooms and on campaign stages. She nodded, almost imperceptibly, then faced the chairman. Mr. Chairman, before we proceed to testimony, a final exhibit. She produced a small matte gray drive sealed in a transparent evidence pouch. Recovered 2 weeks ago under warrant from a storage locker in Fairfax County. The locker was rented under an alias used by a contractor for Nereus Advisories. The device contains ledger exports from a system labeled Lux Ledger, matching the header domains you've just seen. The ledger entries include amounts, timestamps, settlement references, and, most importantly, handles. Handles? The chairman asked. Aliases for principals, code names. She emphasized each one as the slide listed them in a sterile monospaced font. Mercury Vestal Orion Vermilion Fides Eidolon. Gasps again, like a chorus tired of singing but compelled by the music. Crockett explained, the handles map to unique PGP keys. Some keys have been matched to real individuals through key server leaks and seized devices. Others remain unidentified, but the pattern is consistent. Eidolon authorizes strategic flows, Mercury executes banking mechanics, Vestal handles nonprofit cover, Orion coordinates media routing, Vermilion engages proxy messengers, Fides signs off when the B3 window closes. Trump laughed, but it felt forced, the ha-ha-ha of a chandelier swaying after a truck has barreled past outside. Handles. Keys. You're trying to impress people with spy movie words. Crockett's reply was bare of heat. I'm trying to impress upon the public how power is laundered. The chairman adjusted his glasses, voice unsteady. Representative Crockett, are you asserting that the person behind this eidolon figure is domestic? Foreign? Crockett's eyes touched Trump for a beat, then returned to the dais. Whereas, I'm asserting we have reason to believe Eidolon is a single individual with dual residency, operating through Swiss family offices and Emirati advisories, with historical ties to two shuttered philanthropy vehicles. Their preferred methods include art-backed instruments and donor-advised funds that never disperse. Their public footprint is next to nil. A shudder rippled through the room that no HVAC system could explain. Trump stretched, performing boredom. Did you bring a cape for the Eidolon? Maybe a mask? He pointed to the gallery. You see what they're doing? They're trying to make you afraid. They want you to think the game is rigged so you never play. That's the plan. Crockett let the line pass and clicked one final slide. It showed a single sentence from a message labeled B3 Finale, secure. If the principal is questioned, shift burden to insubordinate staff and rogue treasurer. Keep Eidolon undisclosed. Payouts by Aurelius at E+7. The room exhaled and did not inhale again. The chairman cleared his throat, voice hitching. Representative Crockett, you indicated testimony. She sealed the drive back into its pouch, then closed the black folder. Yes, Mr. Chairman. The committee has issued protective orders for a witness who can authenticate the ledgers, explain the codes, and speak directly to the flow approvals. This witness is the former chief accounts controller for a consulting firm that serviced Aurelius and its satellites. He has provided sworn statements under penalty of perjury, and he is prepared to answer questions today. Trump snapped upright, the chair legs scraping like a chalk scream. What's his name? He demanded, voice ricocheting off marble. What's his name, Jasmine? Say it. Crockett didn't look at him. She faced the chairman. Given the risk profile, we request that the witness enter under federal protection protocols. The chairman nodded once. So ordered. Crockett lifted her binder. The metronome in her chest ticked true. Outside the doors, footsteps approached, measured official, the cadence of people used to moving through threats. The gallery leaned forward as one organism, the cameras hunting the hinge between rumor and revelation. Trump gripped the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. Bring him, he said, half growl, half plea. Let's see the liar. The doors swung open. A man stepped through, flanked by two marshals. He looked smaller than the storm he carried. Mid-50s, tired eyes, the tidy caution of someone who had learned to live quietly in loud worlds. He clutched a second evidence pouch, a key card, worn and cracked at the edges, its surface stamped with a minimal logo, just a stylized laurel wreath embossed in silver. The seal of Aurelius. Crockett didn't smile. She didn't blink. She simply said, Mr. Chairman, the witness is ready. And for the first time since the hearing began, the chamber wasn't a stage. It was a reckoning. The witness stepped forward slowly, flanked by two U.S. Marshals. The overhead lights caught the faint sheen of sweat on his brow, but his posture was upright, almost defiant. His name had been withheld from the public record, sealed until this very moment. The murmurs in the gallery built into a rolling wave of curiosity and anticipation. He reached the table, placed the evidence pouch in front of him, and raised his right hand. The oath was administered quickly, almost drowned out by the noise of clicking cameras. State your name for the record, the chairman ordered. The man cleared his throat. His voice was low but steady. My name is Elliot Raines, former chief accounts controller, Halcyon Consulting, primary contractor for Aurelius Foundation's financial services. A collective gasp surged through the room. Halcyon had been whispered about in financial circles for years, a boutique firm with no website, no public clients, yet rumored to handle billions in specialized accounts. Trump leaned forward, pointing directly at Raines. Never heard of him. Another fraud. Another loser they dragged out of the swamp. But Raines didn't even flinch. He placed the cracked keycard onto the table, sliding it across the polished wood. The laurel wreath logo shimmered faintly. This card gave me access to the Aurelius ledgers. I was responsible for balancing transactions before they were broken apart and rerouted through shell entities. Every time money left the United States under the Aurelius banner, I saw it. And every time, authorization came from one of 6 principals. He paused. One of those principals was identified internally as Principal D. Crockett leaned forward. And who is Principal D, Mr. Raines? Raines met her gaze, then turned toward Trump. His voice dropped, heavy and deliberate. Donald J. Trump. The chamber erupted. Shouts, gasps, chaos. Journalists shouting into their phones. Security pushing back as the gallery surged forward. The chairman's gavel hammered over and over, but it was like striking the ocean. Trump slammed both hands on the table. Lie, absolute lie. This is perjury. He's making it up. Raines raised his voice to cut through the noise. I have ledger entries, digital keys, time-stamped authorizations tied directly to Trump Organization devices. I made backups. Because I knew one day this would come crashing down. Crockett seized the opening. Mr. Raines, are you prepared to authenticate those ledgers today? Yes, he replied firmly, under oath. He pulled another evidence pouch from his briefcase, a USB drive with tamper-proof seals. These are mirror copies of the Lux ledger system used by Aurelius. Every transaction, every approval, every pseudonym, including the codes used by Eidolon. At that name, the room shivered again. Crockett's voice sharpened. Can you identify Eidolon? Raines hesitated. He glanced at the marshals, then at the committee. Not by name, not fully. Eidolon never signed their real identity, but he swallowed hard. I can tell you this. Trump wasn't the architect. He was a beneficiary, a very willing one. The true architect, the one we called Eidolon, operated above even him. The silence that followed was deeper than the uproar had been. Every head turned, first to Trump, then back to Raines. Trump pounced on the opening. There. You hear that? Not me. Not me. I told you, I don't know Aurelius. This guy admits it. Somebody else is behind it, somebody else pulling the strings. But Crockett wasn't finished. She leaned into her mic, eyes locked on Raines. Mr. Raines, did Donald Trump personally approve transfers routed through Aurelius? Raines nodded once, slowly. Yes, repeatedly. He wasn't the mastermind, but he signed, he authorized, he knew. The gallery gasped again. It wasn't the image of Trump as omnipotent villain. It was worse. It was Trump as the willing frontman for something darker, hidden, still unnamed. Crockett closed her binder with a snap. Mr. Chairman, I request that Mr. Raines's testimony, along with the submitted evidence, be entered into the record immediately. The chairman, pale but resolute, nodded. So ordered. The cameras zoomed in on Trump. His smirk was gone. His eyes darted left, then right, calculating exits, angles, allies. He clenched his jaw, then spat into the microphone. This is a setup. You're all puppets. And one day soon, everyone will see who's really pulling the strings. But for the first time, his voice didn't carry triumph. It carried fear. And as the hearing recessed for a brief break, the whisper of a single word spread through the hall like a chill draft. Eidolon. The shadow was no longer rumor. It was real. And it was coming. The hearing room was still ringing from Elliot Raines's revelation. The word Eidolon clung to the air like smoke, but the true fire came from Donald Trump himself. His face was flushed crimson, his fists pounding the table in rhythm with his fury. You see this circus? He bellowed into the microphone, voice booming across the chamber. You see what they're doing to your favorite president? They drag in some nobody, some accountant nobody ever heard of. And suddenly, he's supposed to be the oracle of truth. It's pathetic. It's disgusting. And let me tell you something. It's all a lie. The gallery exploded, half cheering, half jeering. The chairman's gavel hammered, but Trump's voice rolled over everything like a tidal wave. Elliot Raines? Trump sneered, stabbing the air with his finger. This man was fired for incompetence, for stealing, for God knows what else. And now he shows up here, probably paid off by Democrats, coached by radical leftists like Jasmine Crockett, to try to take me down before the election. It's disgraceful. Total witch hunt. Raines shifted uncomfortably, but didn't flinch. He spoke into his own microphone, calm, almost weary. I wasn't fired, Mr. Trump. I resigned after refusing to falsify ledger entries. I have the documents. I have the timestamps. And I'm under oath. Are you? The jab landed. The crowd gasped. Crockett leaned back, letting the exchange play out like a chess player watching her opponent overextend. Trump pounded the desk harder. You're a liar and a fraud. And Jasmine. He spun toward Crockett, his eyes narrowing to slits. You should be ashamed of yourself. You call yourself a representative of the people, but you're nothing but a mouthpiece for George Soros, for China, for whoever writes your scripts. You think you can stand here and lecture me? I've built empires. I've run this country. You've done nothing. The words were meant to sting, to diminish. But Crockett only tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with cold fire. Empires built on whose money, Mr. Trump? Run for whose benefit? The chamber roared again, the gavel slammed uselessly. Trump knew he was losing control of the hearing, so he changed tactics. He pulled a manila folder from his briefcase with a flourish. "You want evidence?" he shouted. "Here's evidence. Proof that Elliot Raines is a criminal. Proof that he embezzled millions from Halcyon. Proof that he's the fraud, not me." He slapped the folder onto the table, pages spilling out. Headlines, blurred bank statements, and what looked like an arrest record with Raines's name on it. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters scrambled. Raines leaned forward, voice steady but edged with steel. "That's a forgery, and you know it. The so-called arrest record, dated a month when I was testifying in Switzerland. The bank statements, doctored. Anyone with eyes can see the mismatched fonts. This is desperation, Mr. Trump." Crockett seized her mic. "Mr. Chairman, I request those documents be entered into the record, not as evidence against Mr. Raines, but as further proof of a coordinated disinformation campaign. We'll have forensic experts examine them. I'm confident they'll collapse under scrutiny." Trump leaned back, smirk returning like a mask. "That's what you always say, Jasmine. Always examine, always scrutinize. You've been after me for years. Russia hoax, Ukraine hoax, 2 impeachments. Now this Aurelius fantasy. And guess what? I'm still standing, stronger than ever, because the American people see through you." The gallery cheered wildly. His supporters waved flags, chanting, "USA, USA." The sound rattled the chamber walls, as if the crowd outside had poured straight in. Crockett stood, her binder in hand, and waited for the noise to subside. Her patience itself was a weapon. When she spoke, her voice cut through like glass. "You're right about one thing, Mr. Trump. You are still standing. But not because you're innocent, because every time you're cornered, you shout louder, you distract, you bully. It's a tactic, not a defense. But tactics don't erase signatures. They don't erase ledgers. And they won't erase the testimony of a man under oath." Trump shot back instantly. "And what about you? What about your donors? Where do you think your campaign money comes from? You think you're so clean? Maybe we should look into your books, Jasmine. Maybe you're the one tied to this so-called Aurelius. Ever think about that?" The accusation hung heavy, absurd, yet dangerous. Conspiracy thrives not on proof, but on suggestion. The gallery erupted again, some chanting her name, others shouting her down. Crockett remained calm. "If you believe that, Mr. Trump, then call for the investigation. Open every one of my accounts, every one of my donors. I have nothing to hide. Can you say the same?" Trump froze for half a second, just long enough for the cameras to catch it. Then he banged the table again, changing the subject. "This whole thing is a disgrace. This witness is a liar. This committee is corrupt. And mark my words, when I'm back in the White House, there will be consequences." The threat was unmistakable. The chairman leaned forward, face pale. "Mr. Trump, you will refrain from making threats against members of this committee." Trump smirked. "Not a threat, a promise." The words sent a chill through the chamber. Even some of his supporters shifted uncomfortably. Raines spoke again, his voice quieter but more devastating for it. "Mr. Trump, you can attack me all you want, but Aurelius isn't about me or even about you. It's bigger. It's the system you helped legitimize, and now it's out in the open." Crockett closed her binder, her eyes fixed on Trump. "You can shout, you can smear, but you can't stop what's coming next." The chairman declared a recess, his gavel striking like a pistol crack, but the damage was already done. Trump's counterattack had created chaos, yes, but in his fury, he had also revealed fear. And outside, the name Eidolon echoed louder, spreading through the streets, the airwaves, the feeds. The shadow was growing. The real battle hadn't even begun. The chamber was electric when the committee reconvened. Hours had passed, but no one had left their seats. Outside, the streets of Washington were choked with protesters and supporters, their chants echoing against the Capitol's stone walls. Inside, the air smelled of sweat, tension, and inevitability. Jasmine Crockett returned to her chair, her binder heavier than ever in her hands. Across from her, Donald Trump leaned back, arms crossed, a forced grin stretched across his face. Elliot Raines sat at the witness table, pale but resolute, his evidence pouches neatly stacked in front of him. The chairman cleared his throat. "Representative Crockett, you indicated before recess that further evidence would be presented. Proceed." Crockett rose slowly, letting the weight of the moment build. "Mr. Chairman, Members of the committee, the American people deserve clarity. We've heard testimony. We've seen ledger fragments, but words and numbers can be dismissed, denied, distorted. That ends today. She lifted a sleek black tablet from her binder and set it on the table. The screen glowed to life, casting an eerie blue light across her face. "This," she said, "is a direct export from the Lux ledger system of Aurelius, verified by 3 independent forensic auditors. Inside are hundreds of transactions linking Aurelius not just to Mr. Trump's campaign, but to media outlets, lobbying firms, and issue advocacy groups across the country. And every transaction carries one thing in common: an approval code tied to 6 principles." The screen projected a list across the monitors. 6 code names flickered in stark white letters: Mercury, Vestal, Orion, Vermilion, Fides, Eidolon. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Phones buzzed. The names were no longer whispers. They were etched in light for the world to see. Crockett's voice cut through the noise. "These aren't just aliases. Each principal had unique digital keys. We've matched 3 of them to real individuals already under federal investigation, but 2 remain unidentified. And the 6th, Eidolon, is the architect." She tapped the screen. A new slide appeared. A ledger entry showing $12,000 special discretionary fund. Principal D-approval. Beneath it, a stylized signature unmistakably belonging to Donald J. Trump. The room erupted. Some shouted, "Forgery!" Others screamed, "Got him!" The gavel slammed furiously, but order was gone. Trump lurched forward, his voice a roar. "Fake! Fake signature! Fake ledger! Fake everything! This is a hoax!" But Crockett cut him off with the sharpness of a blade. "Then explain this, Mr. Trump. Explain why, 2 hours after that authorization, a media blitz flooded swing states with ads attacking your opponents, ads traced directly to Aurelius-funded firms. Explain why your campaign reported 0 expenditures for that week, yet the ads still aired. Explain why your inner circle received wire deposits in the exact amounts Aurelius dispersed." Trump faltered for a heartbeat, then slammed the desk again. "Because I'm popular, because people love me, volunteers, donors, patriots. They paid for those ads. Not me. I didn't sign anything." Crockett's eyes narrowed. "But you did sign, and Mr. Raines authenticated it under oath, which means either you were complicit or someone else signed in your name."